We're going to transition now to Lisa Tyler at the Arkansas Department of Education. Lisa is the, as I said, Director of Student Support Services for Arkansas. She has a number of responsibilities at the department. She's the Coordinator of Services for Gifted and Talented and Advanced Placement, Alternative Ed, Special Ed, and Guidance and School Counseling, and she's currently partnering with Hope Worsham to lead the implementation of Arkansas's student success plans. Lisa? Lisa, sorry, we can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear us.
Sorry, I thought I pushed
there you go.
mute. I think I pushed mute. So
there you go.
I loved what Scott had to share about student success plans or individual learning plans. It validates our beliefs about the importance of this process. We've been doing a lot of work in Arkansas around student-focused education, and in fact, our vision for excellence in education is centered on transforming Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education. We think student success plans will be key in helping us realize that vision. So student success plans were mandated here through legislation in 2017. It's fairly new to us, to help ensure every student leaves K-12 education, college, and career ready. And last fall, Hope and I conducted regional trainings across the state for district teams in the development and implementation of the student success planning process. We didn't tell them how to do it. We didn't provide a template because we were concerned this would turn what could be a rich process into a compliance document, and that's not what we wanted. We just told them about the required components, and we provided a planning guide with guiding questions for them to work as a team in some protected time. And in preparation for that, and even after the fact, we visited a number of schools to observe processes that had already been put in place around student success plans. And the thing we heard most often is how important the relationship building piece is, as Scott said, between a caring adult and a student. So the purpose of student success plans in Arkansas, and I think I've heard from many other states, is to help guide students to post-secondary success through documented conversation between students and adults. And we emphasize in our training with districts, it's about the plan, not the paper. Ongoing conversations, making students aware of opportunities, and helping them plan a course of study that helps them meet their goals, what steps they need to take to get there. In our training, we emphasize we want school teams to build on what they already have in place. The process varies across districts, and that's okay. It's as personal to the district as it is to the student. Everyone has different resources, different opportunities, different businesses and industry in their community that need different things from their students. Many of our schools are using advisory period to focus on their student success planning process. Some of our schools are documenting on Google Slides or Excel documents, or using their college and career planning tools that they've purchased to document some of this work. So everybody's doing a little something different, and from what we've observed so far, it's an excellent process, and we've heard lots of benefits even in the early stages. So one of the things we thought it was important, again, was to emphasize what it is and what it is not. It's not about the paper, it's about the process. One of the things we were concerned about was that schools would see this as a replacement for the previous requirement to provide intervention for students scoring below grade level through an academic improvement plan. That requirement was an exercise in compliance for the most part, and schools spent hours tracking signatures for documents that didn't necessarily translate into positive outcomes for students. So that requirement went away, and some schools assumed that the student success plan was the new AIP, and we've emphasized that's not the case. Intervention is part of the student success plan, but it is much more comprehensive than intervention, academic intervention. Again, conversations with students about their needs, interests, and aptitude leading to success. The plan should address the student's true needs and how the school is going to support them in meeting those needs. So our law, Act 930, states that beginning in 1819, so the end of this year, each student by the end of 8th grade shall have a student success plan. And there are some specific components. So it's developed by school personnel in collaboration with parents and students, reviewed and updated annually. The Student Success Plan is a dynamic working plan that is visited periodically by the student and an advisor. So our law says two different things. One place it says annually and then visited periodically, and we stress with our schools this means more than once a year, right? It's ongoing conversations, and it's documented in a format and manner that is accessible to the student. This is the student's plan, not the school's plan, and they need to have access to that plan. So there are 4 distinct parts in the Student Success Plan in Act 930, and one is to guide the student along pathways to graduation. So what's the required coursework, what are courses of interest, considering their students' post-secondary plans, accelerated opportunities for accelerated learning, what are courses based on identified areas of strength, extracurricular activities such as music, band, athletics. It's not just academics. And we do address academic deficits and interventions. So do they need point-in-time remediation? Do they need credit recovery, tutoring? And the Student Success Plan has to include college and career planning components. So college and career planning tools are part of this. Industry-recognized credentials, all those things are things they should be discussing in this process. We talked about the importance of data to determine where students need support in each of these components. And again, academic and non-academic, interpersonal skills and soft skills. One of the things we talked to the schools about in terms of acceleration was, for instance, you might have a student enrolled in all AP classes, and the area that that student might need acceleration is a social emotional area or a non-academic area. So participating in a club, perhaps, might be an acceleration activity for that student. Our law states that public school districts may include community engagements as part of the student-focused learning system and student success plan. So we talk to schools that this is about this being a great place to practice some of these skills that students might need. At the end of our training, we really asked students to consider what they wanted their kids to leave K-12 high school with. How many of them already had some kind of student success planning process in place? And if their process was not leading in that direction, they might need to adjust that process or make a new plan. And the last portion of Act 930 in Arkansas that I want to talk briefly about is the IEP. So our law states that an individual education program can meet the requirements of a student success plan if it addresses academic deficits for students not meeting standards-based academic goals and includes a transition plan. So we've had many conversations about this section, and yes, the law allows the IEP and transition plan to meet the documentation requirements of the student success plan and should certainly inform and be informed by the student success plan, but students with IEP should not receive less than other students, and this process should be every bit as robust for them. If you're doing the lion's share of the work as a process during an advisory period, for instance, wouldn't you want your students with IEPs involved in that process? We encourage teams to have conversations and make sure they involve their special education teachers in the development of this process. And I think we're ready for questions.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so glad that you included that distinction and where these IEPs and student success plans overlap in Arkansas. Thank you for that. So we have a couple of questions from our participants, and the first one is, related to who is using individual learning plans. So our participant wanted to know whether this is only high school age students or whether they're used with adult learners. So I know that middle school students are also engaged in this process in some states, but Scott, are you aware of their use with adult learners?
Yeah, we're starting to see a lot more happening in the post-secondary area. We're starting to see, I wouldn't say it's there yet, but one of the exciting things happening that is, as post-secondary is realizing they need to start focusing on completion rates as well, as they start realizing that this is kind of a journey that they have to help students on. They're starting to look at some planning processes, and we're starting to see some of this moving up. I think Colorado is one of the first states to really fully put the linkage between the secondary and post-secondary, and so they could certainly talk about that. We're seeing a little happening in Wisconsin. We're seeing some points where the higher ed is connecting with the high school to see how they can bring the process all the way through. We heard some stories at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee Technical College, as well as the Milwaukee School District. So we're starting to see that bubbling up, if you will, through that process. We are seeing a lot more happening on the lower level. So we've got a lot of districts that are bringing this down into kindergarten and even preschool. And so we're seeing kind of the full K-12 version. But I'm excited to see some of the higher ed as well.
That's great. Thank you. Lisa, I wonder whether you could speak to some of what you think the early lessons are from Arkansas's implementation so far. I know that you're in the early stages of this. So can you maybe talk a little bit about what some of those early lessons might be? Oh, Lisa, you might be on mute.
Sorry. One of the lessons that we've learned, I think, kind of validated what we thought to begin with about how to roll this process out with our districts. I think if you provide a form or a required template, it does turn into a compliance document, and districts are unable to make that fit what their unique needs are at every district or for individual students. The other thing that we learned is this process and the success of this process is not sold by the State Department. It's sold by the districts who have already begun to implement. It's sold by telling stories of the teachers in those buildings telling stories and the students telling stories. So after our law was enacted, we began searching out those early implementers and interviewing students and teachers and hearing them talk about the importance and what difference this had made in the lives of the students, engaged everyone around this process and helped our schools see how valuable it is.
Great, thank you. And I saw in the chat that Alaska is PK through adult planning, and I noticed that Arizona is also starting to connect high school ILPs to the post-secondary e-portfolio. So that's great. That's great. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about how many states are actually currently mandating individual learning plans? I know that there are variations. I mean, some states are requiring them just for students who are deemed at risk, and other states are mandating them for everyone. But how many states are mandating them for all students? Scott, you might be on mute.
I am on mute, and I had it taken off, so I apologize. So yeah, so we did a policy analysis, a national one, as part of our study, and I know that AAR has done a more recent one, but we estimate that 45 states are either mandating or strongly encouraging their use. And so, for example, Massachusetts has just finished training 80 schools and will train 80 more next year, and is putting together resources as a strong encouragement. And we're not really differentiating then in those states around the mandates. And I understand that in some states they've narrowed it down to just career tech ed or just on the at-risk. For the most part, those 45 states are looking at, they're moving towards full school implementation and trying to engage all students in it. And very similar to what you heard in Arkansas, sometimes the mandate may not provide for all students, like they're differentiating with students with IEPs, but the active implementation, the implementation policies that they're using are different than the state mandates, and they're actually aligning much more for a whole school, all students type of thing. So that's kind of the best data we have that I have access to in that, is taking a look at there is this energy moving forward, and there's only a few states that haven't really fully bought in or providing some kind of encouragement at minimum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, Lisa or Scott, what advice you might have for states that are interested in ILPs. I mean, part of me wonders where these efforts kind of bubble up from. Do they come from the policy community? Do they come from the practitioner community advocating for these policies? What advice do you have for states that might be interested in this? Lisa, did you want to respond? I can certainly, we've been kind of studying that as well. I can certainly take a first shot.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's really the college and career readiness has been the kind of mantra that's driven schools or states to start looking at the ILPs more than anything else. And when you take a state like Delaware is saying that they're going to lose 500,000 employees in the next decade, and they only have 135,000 students in the pipeline. And so when you think of what that means, it means that those individuals that are going to be coming out of their school system had better have a better, clear idea of how they're going to connect into the world of work, or else their economic competitiveness is going to be challenged. This is how Wisconsin provided energy for a state that does not at all ever mandate anything around education. They mandated the ACP because they have the same data points, that they recognize that we have a big group of baby boomers leaving, and we do not have a pipeline to fulfill the jobs that are going to become open. So there's an economic component that's also driving this, but there's also a realization within the college and career readiness that what we've been missing throughout all of this is an engaged student and their family really recognizing why education and what the pathways to an economic success, decent work and access to good high-paying jobs, that it's going to, what that involves. And then there was one other point you had in there. Oh, how do they find out if they're a state and they're interested? The key message I have, and I think our state leaders are on the call would also agree, is when it's time for you to say, how do we do this, look at what other people have done. So Oklahoma is one of the latest that went back to Wisconsin and looked at their materials and helped to redesign and add to things that have already been taking place in other states. No one has to do this from scratch. There are tremendous resources, materials, and stories and data points that people can rely on in designing. So the big key is just join a community of practice that are there. Call your other state leaders that are involved in this, and they'll connect you up with pre-access resources and support.
Yeah, I would agree with Scott. One of the things we talk to our participants about is, 20 years ago, what did we want for every student? We all talked about college, right? And that's not the case today. There are so many opportunities, and this is about letting students know what those opportunities are and then helping them plan and get prepared for those opportunities. It might be college or might be something else, again, depending on their community, depending on if they want to move. We have lots of jobs that we don't have workers for in Arkansas as well as across the nation. So it's helping get our students prepared for that success after they graduate in a career or the next level that is meaningful to them and something that they want to do and have the skills to do.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's move on to the